So good afternoon, everybody. Apologies for some of the technical difficulties that we were experiencing. Unfortunately, we haven't had success with Facebook Live, but we will be recording this session, and it will be our intent to put the session, at least a public session of this town hall, on my Facebook Live page. But at this moment, to begin the program, I will toss it over to our host, Sophia, for this afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for welcoming us. Oh, I have a little bit of background feed. Is that me or is that, am I okay now? Okay, I sound okay now. Again, good afternoon. I hope you are all enjoying your weekend. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sophia Jacob, and I'm the Equity and Diversity Liaison with the Office of Councillor Rawlson King. On behalf of the Councillor's Office, we would like to thank you all for joining us today. We would like to also welcome everybody that's come in, and hopefully if we can resolve the issue with Facebook, we'll go on Facebook, and then it'll be simultaneously streamed on both platforms, but we are recording. The Council will be sharing many important updates and information here on this call. We definitely want to hear from Ottawa's ACB communities on issues that matter to us. We would like to recognize that we are in Ottawa are located on unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, and extend our respect for all First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people for their valuable past and present contributions to this land. We also recognize the continent of Africa as the cradle of humanity. We extend our respect to all peoples who identify as African, Caribbean, and Black, and to the contributions they have made to the development of human civilization. We recognize that we are in the latter part of the UN Decade for People of African Descent. Under the themes of recognition, justice, and development, we take this opportunity to reflect on our current condition in this country and continue to work with our allies towards making long-term improvements to the lives of diverse peoples on this shared land. I'm just going to be taking everybody through a few of the meeting call guidelines. We want to kindly ask that there be no interruptions when others are speaking, and that you please hold your questions until we open the floor for participants to speak. There'll be an opportunity for Q&A in this meeting as well. We ask that everyone who is live on the call through Zoom to please put yourself on mute. If you are directly on the Zoom platform, the mute button is at the bottom of your screen. If you have called in by phone, we are asking that you place your phone on mute. The reason for this is when the Zoom is on live, it picks up any of the slightest background noises and movements, and we want to respect everybody who is on the call by being able to hear them clearly so we can respond accordingly. If you are home and using your cell phone to call into this meeting and you have another call coming in, if you're choosing to answer the call, we kindly ask you to leave the conference call here and not put us on hold. When you go to answer the other call, it leaves us hearing a beeping signal, which is also an interruption. When it comes time to give a comment or when we open the conversation for Q&A, we ask folks to use the raise hand option on the platform. You can find the raise hand option in the participants section by clicking the word raise hand. When you've asked your question or have made your comment, please lower your hand. Again, it's best that you use this function and not interrupt by taking yourself off of mute. If you don't have this function on your device, you can email me your question. I'll mention my email in a minute. For those of you who are on the Zoom platform but choose not to speak but would still like to ask a question, please type it in the chat box. Again, we're trying to make the questions so that we are able to see them. So please bear with us if we miss any of your questions. We're going to try to read the chat as much as possible. If you have a Ward 13, or if you're from Ward 13, which is Rita Rockcliffe Ward, specific question or concern, can you please contact the office by emailing Rita Rockcliffe Ward at ottawa.ca or call 613-580-2483. We won't be addressing any of those concerns on this specific call. And lastly, this call is Black-led, Black-focused, and designed for Ottawa's ACB communities to provide feedback, give information and updates for your conversations that we are concerned about. Again, this call is only for Ottawa's ACB community members here in the Zoom. So please respect that this conversation is for us and by us. I'll be leaving again my information, which is my email, sophia.jacob@rideau-rockcliffe.ca. I'll also be leaving it in the chat. So now I'm going to pass it back over to the councillor for his opening statements, and then I will come back and introduce our first guest speaker. Thank you. Back to you, Rawlson.
Thank you, Sophia, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending this Black Community Virtual Town Hall. I'm Rawlson King, Councillor for Rideau-Rockcliffe, and the newly appointed Council Liaison for Anti-Racism and Ethnocultural Relations Initiatives here at the City of Ottawa. I'm pleased to be holding this meeting because now, more than ever, we need to recognize inequalities in our society and the devastating impacts of systemic racism. The current social unrest we're seeing throughout North America demonstrates the real and continuing impact of racism and the continuing struggle against racial inequality. Our entire city needs to recognize that racism, injustice, and entrenched systemic inequality have as much impact here in Canada and in Ottawa particularly as it does south of the border. As a consequence, our city must take concrete steps to collectively address systemic racism in our community. We have seen discrimination through prejudice, ignorance, and racist stereotyping, which ultimately has led to disparities in income, employment, housing, healthcare, and education. That's not a situation we accept, and over the last year, we have moved to ensure the city is actively taking measures to eliminate systemic racism. In the city's 2020 budget, the City of Ottawa committed funding for the development of a corporate anti-racism strategy and hired Yursa Osman, our first full-time anti-racism specialist. And you'll have a chance to hear from her today. I'm proud that Mayor Watson and my council colleagues, which includes Councillor Diane Deans, who is also here today, wholeheartedly embraced my proposal to establish an anti-racism secretariat for the City of Ottawa. When we established that policy unit in this year's budget, so when we established it in this year's budget, the aim was to address systemic racism in our community and within the corporation. The Secretariat will make sure we apply an anti-racism lens to the policies our city develops. When we need to ensure, but we really do need to ensure that the decisions we make and the services we provide are delivered equitably, and that they cause no barriers for residents because of their color, culture, or ethnic origin. Our government has a responsibility to identify when members of our community are denied equal opportunity to success and to eliminate the systemic barriers creating this inequity. It's the goal of the Anti-Racism Secretariat to do just that, whether it's related to employment, governance, health, housing, or economic development. I look forward to the Secretariat providing support for our community groups who have long labored towards equity and social justice. And I see many people on this call who are members of these community groups, who have supported organizations that have really tried to drive more equity for new immigrants, racialized and religious communities. And of course, the Secretariat will also be supporting First Nations, Inuit, Métis, Canada's First Peoples. All these groups, which obviously include our Black community, call Ottawa home, and they have a right to fulsome participation in our city. We want residents to know that Council and the city as a corporation is collectively committed to actual systemic change and to the elimination of racism in our city, which is long overdue. The first concrete step to address racism will be to ensure that we listen to the community in order to provide appropriate socioeconomic supports. This town hall will provide me with an opportunity to listen and for the community to outline their needs and concerns. We will be joined today by elected officials, professionals, and most importantly by community members dedicated to discussing socioeconomic development, poverty reduction, and public safety. I know that Sophia is going to provide a biography for Councillor Deans, but I am pleased to introduce our special guest, Diane Deans, a colleague and friend who I am proud to welcome to our town hall, as well as back to City Hall after her courageous fight with cancer. I'm very pleased that she is here to briefly talk about community engagement, especially in regards to the Police Services Board, which she chairs. But before we throw to Diane, I will let Sophia provide a bit of biographic introduction.
So just quickly, thank you, Councillor Deans. Diane Deans is the City of Ottawa Councillor for Gloucester Southgate. Diane is the chair of the Ottawa Police Services Board and the chair of Crime Prevention Ottawa. Diane is also a member of the city's Transportation Committee, the Community and Protective Services Committee, and the Committee of Revision. Today, Councillor Deans is with us to share a few important announcements. So I will hand it over to Councillor Diane Deans. Councillor?
Thank you very much, Sophia, and good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to start by saying how happy I am that Councillor King invited me and how appreciative I am of the opportunity to be here today. So thank you for inviting me into your space and giving me this opportunity to listen to what you have to say. I want you to know that I am truly saddened that systemic racism is still ubiquitous in our community, and I personally am dedicated to helping to bring about meaningful change. I know that today is really a chance for me to hear from you, but I'd be remiss if I didn't first take the opportunity to offer my support for your community. As chair of the Ottawa Police Services Board, I have a duty to work for all citizens of this city and ensure that we are building communities where everyone feels safe. And I know this is currently not the case for everyone in your community. Improving the relationship between the Ottawa Police Services and our racialized communities is not easy work, but I truly believe that it can be done. I know that one of the key ways we begin to address this is by fostering meaningful conversations. And that's why I'm proud of the work being done by the Ottawa Police Community Equity Council. OPS has also taken great strides forward with the work being done through the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Action. I also thought I would just take a moment to address the recent personal racist attacks against Chief Slowly. We hired Chief Slowly for many reasons. Principal among them was our desire to bring about meaningful and lasting change. We admired Chief Slowly's leadership ability and his desire to drive change the board is determined to bring about. But I think we all know change is not easy. And as a result, there have been despicable racist memes and personal attacks leveled against our chief. As the chair of the Police Services Board, I want all of you to know that I have expressed to the chief on behalf of the board our disgust at those who propagate hate and our absolute steadfast support of him. I did not dignify this disgusting behavior with a public comment. I knew that would keep it alive in the news cycle, something the author clearly hoped to achieve. But let me assure you, the chief knows absolutely that the Police Services Board is in lockstep with him. The Police Services Board is limited in some of the things that we would like to do to bring about positive change by provincial legislation. And as some of you may know, the Mayor and I, Mayor Watson and I, put forward a notice of motion at last week's council meeting that asked the province of Ontario to change current legislation in order to give us more power when disciplining officers who are charged with serious criminal offenses or misconduct. But that's just one more step in what is going to be a long path forward. I'll finish by reiterating that I am committed to the work I know needs to be done, and I am here today as an ally to you and to listen to your voice and what you have to say. So thanks again for inviting me. I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Councillor Deans. We appreciate your comments. I just want to remind everybody that here is a safe space for Ottawa's ACB community members. This is a call just for us, by us, and led by us to serve our community. So the conversation that's going to be had here is a safe space for us. So I don't want anybody to worry about anything coming forward. Up next, we had decided to change the agenda a little bit due to the fact that we have a surprise guest speaker. As you know, 2 weeks ago, the federal government had made an announcement of $221 million for a new program for Black businesses and Black entrepreneurs called the Black Entrepreneurship Program. Today, our surprise guest speaker will speak to this announcement and take questions from guests who are here on the call. So please help us to welcome Liberal Member of Parliament from Hull Elmer, MP Greg Fergus. Minister Fergus is also the chair of the Black Parliamentary Caucus. Thank you, Minister Fergus, for joining us today to speak to the entrepreneurship program and taking time to do Q&A with us. So I will pass it over to MP Greg Fergus.
Well, thank you very much, Sophia. And just for correction, folks, it's just Greg, just call me Greg. I'm a member of Parliament, not a minister. I like to say I'm a nice guy, but I'm not yet honorable, as a joke. Let me thank Rawlson and Sophia for inviting me to join in on this conversation today, and also say hello to Councillor Deans, and to wish her, first of all, thank her for her words, and also just so there's a profile and courage in terms of your own health, and I'm so glad that you're doing better and that you've resumed your rightful place at City Hall. But I'd also like to really thank my good friend Rawlson. Rawlson, when he got elected, when he ran was, I think, a really good move for our community, good for Black Canadians in our region. And then he had the courage to run, and of course, the people of his district of Rockcliffe, Rideau, had the good sense to make him their councillor. And what a change it's been. As being for a couple of years the only Black Canadian, elected Black Canadian in the region, it's so nice to have a brother to join me there, and to really help. Just be present to show that there's a different way forward, that our horizons can be expanded, that Ottawa and Gatineau and the National Capital Region, in fact, just in Canada, sometimes we just have to say we're here. And we are people who are working hard in our community, as Rawlson had done for many years, as in his particular neighborhood association work that he's been doing volunteer-wise for as long as he's been in this area, to see that people just could look beyond a skin color and say, you know what, we want to make a change, and that we were able to get elected. And I think that's just part of the discussion which we're going to have today. Now, yes, I will talk about the Black Entrepreneurship Program, but I think it's also really important to talk about anti-Black racism and the importance of us coming forward as a community. So I'll just speak just very briefly on both of those issues. So in terms of anti-Black racism, it's important for us to recognize that it exists. And it exists in every facet of our communities, as does systemic discrimination exists. We see it in our schools. There have been studies which have come out of Toronto, which have shown that young Black kids are more likely to receive detentions, to receive suspensions, and to receive expulsions from schools. Even though, all things being considered, the actions which are taken by those students are frankly no different than non-Blacks. It's just that they are focused on more, and there is some unconscious bias towards thinking that it's more of a problem when it's, or it's more serious when it's Black students who are involved. We have to move beyond that. And we see that reflected also in streaming in high schools, where, again, more Black kids are streamed out of the university route and more towards vocational school or just finishing post-secondary education. We see it in the workplaces, even in our vaunted federal public service, where yes, Blacks are hired in close to our demographic weight, but certainly as the promotions, as you move up higher the ranks, it becomes more and more homogenous as you move up the higher ranks, and there's not the presence of Black Canadians in the higher ranks of the public service. We see that in politics, we see that in policing, we see it in so many different ways. So what I think today's event does, and what I think what we're trying to do at the federal level, in terms of the Parliamentary Black Caucus, we're trying to give the communities a voice so that we are able to raise these issues. We're also trying to find solutions to attack these problems. And we saw that if some of you, and I see that there are a whole bunch of people who I know who are on this call and who are very involved with Black communities here in the region. But we're seeing a call to saying, look, we have to start attacking this problem. Whether, first of all, we got to measure the problem. And that's what disaggregated data is all about and how important that is. Then we have to take our place and have the supportive tools on the economy, which is in part what we did with the Black Entrepreneurship Program that we announced 2 weeks ago. Third, we are going to have to make sure that we do it, not only do we support on the economy, but we also have to remove the systemic barriers and the anti-Black racism that we find that is in our justice and public security systems. And making sure, and we've listed out a whole bunch of steps that we could take on that front. Fourthly, we have to make sure that there is representation matters. This is why Rawlson matters. This is why we all matter in our involvement in our communities, and why we need to make sure that that happens within our municipal administration, our provincial administration, our federal administration, in the private sector. We need to make sure that their representation certainly does matter. Fourthly, we're going to have to make sure that we also take advantage of these occasions to value the contributions of Black Canadians to our history and to our culture, and to make sure that there are those economic supports. So I think, you know, I'm 51, and you know, sometimes these issues come to the fore and then they slide away. But since the end of May, beginning of June, I have never seen such a sustained focus on this. It seems that we've all had a real consciousness raising awareness in terms of saying, you know what, it's not acceptable anymore. Racism kills. And it seems that all Canadians, not just Black Canadians, but all Canadians are saying, we don't want to be a part of this. We want to be part of a solution. And how do we get there? And so for the last 4 months, there has been serious and ongoing discussions on this, which has really reassured me. The story has been kept alive and in the forefront. Now, I don't know how long this is going to carry on for, so we need to work fast and hard to reach out, make sure we have allies, and make meaningful changes now. And I think that's why, and if you'll allow me for just a couple of minutes just to talk about the Black Entrepreneurship Program, this is why I think this is an important tool for all Black Canadians. It's a way of saying, we know what the problem is, and the problem is that there has been anti-Black racism in terms of our access to capital. Let me just give you an example. Although you know, Emancipation Day was 186 years ago, in 1834, there really hasn't been economic emancipation. There have been Blacks have not been extended that full generational capacity and access to economic levers as other communities have. For example, you know, there were neighborhoods where you couldn't get a loan. You weren't able to get a deed on your property that has been in your family for generations. You weren't able to, it was not, municipalities wouldn't offer, or provinces wouldn't offer that title of location, which is necessary for you to actually own that property. And by doing so, then it becomes difficult when you want to pass that on to your children to pass on that economic wealth that children use by having land-based capital to create that wealth that would move on from generation to generation. So we have been held back. There, if you take a look at the loan profiles of Black Canadians today, you will see that their loan profiles are smaller. They don't have the same access. They're not we don't have our demographic weight in terms of having access to loans from our financial institutions. And as a result, you can't build that ability to grow your business the way you should. If you don't have access to regular funds, then you have to go seek out funding from friends, neighbors, and different groups, which makes those funds smaller. And so it makes it difficult to create that wealth. Well, this Black Entrepreneurship Program is an attempt to get beyond that. And what's most encouraging is that most of the big banks want to be a part of it, and they put some real money to address a problem that I think they realize it doesn't, they don't have a great record, and they want to get ahead of that and make changes, and because they don't want to have those systemic barriers that are in place anymore. So in total, we have $221 million to help Black businesses, Black-run businesses, Black-owned businesses for three things. One is to create a knowledge hub. Again, back to that question I said at the beginning, you can't change what you can't measure. You need to have the data. You need to be able to share that data and to use it appropriately. So there's that hub, which is supposed to help us learn what we need to do. Then there's the mentorship aspect of it. And that is using Black-run organizations to help support these business people to create those networks so that, again, they're getting the right business support so that they are going to successfully grow their businesses, or if they don't successfully grow, because failure is a good part of business, that they're able to help those people learn from from the mistakes that they made, so that they can make new mistakes later on, not repeat the same ones. And thirdly, of course, there is a big chunk of money which is going to be able to help people get access to loans from $25,000 to $250,000. So I think with that approach, I think we've really hit the nail on the head, and we hit the nail on the head with that program is because the program came from people like you, from Black business people, Black entrepreneurs, Black community organizers who identified what the problem was and what they would need to overcome it. And this is one of the few programs I could say that, well, at least that I know of, that really reflect the needs of the community. And that's why I expect it to do very well. And that's why I've seen such positive reception for it. So look, I've talked for a long bit of time. I'm sorry, Sophia. I'm sorry, Rawlson. But I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have.
So if anybody would like to ask a question, we'd ask them to use the raise hand function in the participants column, and we will start taking questions immediately.
And you'll excuse me, je viens de voir qu'il y avait un commentaire d'une grande amie, Sarah Onyango, qui a fait ses commentaires en français, puis j'ai complètement oublié de vous adresser la parole en français. Alors, s'il y a des francophones qui aimeraient que je réponde en question en français, ça me fait tout à fait un grand plaisir de le faire. Et puis, accepter mes excuses de ne pas avoir vous adresser la parole en français et en anglais. Merci.
Yes, in both English and French, the minister will be taking questions.
Just Greg. I'm not a minister.
Sorry. It's just like, yeah, it's a habit. Sorry. Okay, Greg will be taking questions. So our first question comes from Alem. Alem, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alem Legesa. I'm the founder of Trendify Life, the founder and president, but also I am grateful for being a professor at Algonquin College, teaching great engineers and programmers contributing to the local economy and around the world. So my question will be two, okay? The first one is about the local opportunities in Ottawa and the initiative, we need to benefit from them. And the second one will be quick, and it's about the federal funding announcement for entrepreneurship. So quickly, technology sector has created the biggest economic opportunity, created well-paying jobs, wealth, Ottawa has about 2,000 tech sectors, employing about 70,000 people, which is 10% of the workforce. However, the participation of Black and Indigenous people in this sector is minimal or non-existent. Black and Indigenous people makes about 1% of the tech workforce in Ottawa, which is 1% per company. So this is not fair, and we are missing out in a big way. So to change this unfair and consistent opportunity gap, we need a very strong initiative that represent Black and Indigenous people in technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. To do that, we need to create awareness about the programs here in Ottawa, but also building skills. Skills not only to get into the colleges, but also excel at workplace, so that we can compete for managerial and executive position. This is very important, especially for young people with parents who are doing 3 jobs to support their families, but can't afford to hire mentor to send for after school program. So it requires a collective effort, communities, businesses, all levels of the government. But this is great for the city of Ottawa because it makes it welcoming city, friendly city, safe city, but also diversity empowers innovation, and great for the Black community as well. And the second one is quickly Minister Greg. Okay, sorry. So it's great. The announcement is great, but it doesn't solve the main problem. Okay, as entrepreneur doing it for the past 10 years here, as probably the first Black person, starting tech company here. So our challenges were, be it accessing opportunity to customers, and seed funding and mentors and training. Accessing to customers helps you to improve your product services and refine your product. Basically, you are designing your product for the right customers. And then mentors are needed because they give you access to investors. They give you access to opportunities, customers. So that's why we need this initiative. Okay, it's great. The loan is great, but it's missing those strong components. Very important, more important than the loan even. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Alem. I think I do appreciate that, and I think there are a few things that I would like to say. First of all, 1% of the tech community or the engineering community being composed of Black and Indigenous peoples are just not acceptable. That's, in terms of demographic weight, we're more closer to about 8% of the total population in Canada. And certainly in this region, we are a much greater percentage because of it's a place that has attracted a lot of Black and Indigenous people. So there's no reason for that, and I'm so glad to see that you are in that you are in the spot to help teach, mentor, and bring kids through Algonquin College. We need more of you, and we need to be supporting you in what you're doing. Regarding the Black Entrepreneurship Program, a big part of it, as I mentioned, one of the 3 main hubs of part of it is the fact that A, is to measure what we need to do, but most importantly is to offer that mentorship. And that's why I think that the program makes so much sense, and it's mentorship of Black entrepreneurs helping Black entrepreneurs. I think that's a good way forward. You have to sometimes you have to see it to believe it, and I think that's the way forward. Je vais juste répéter mes commentaires en français parce qu'Alem avait dit, juste pour des francophones qui sont qui participent à cet événement, Alem avait noté le fait que dans son domaine, il est un professeur en génie au Collège algonquin, qu'il avait remarqué qu'il y a seulement 1% des gens qui sont dans l'industrie dans la région de la capitale nationale qui font partie de la communauté noire ou de la communauté autochtone. Et j'ai répondu que c'est certain, on forme à peu près 8% de la population en général à travers le Canada. Ça n'a aucun sens qu'il y a seulement 1% des étudiants ou des pratiquants dans ce domaine qui composent comment on dit ça en français, je m'excuse, le workforce, le main-d'œuvre dans cette industrie. Et une des raisons pour laquelle je suis très fier du programme qu'on vient d'annoncer il y a 2 semaines, c'est que il y a 3 volets dans ce programme-là, puis un volet, c'est le mentorat, qui est tellement important. Ce sont des entrepreneurs noirs, ce sont des commerçants noirs qui aident les gens qui veulent établir leur propre commerce, leurs propres entreprises. Alors, de cette façon, c'est nous qui on aide nos confrères et consoeurs à créer des emplois pour tous les Canadiens, mais de créer la prospérité pour tous les Canadiens. Mais c'est important quelquefois, il faut voir pour croire qu'on est présent dans ces industries-là. C'est la raison pour laquelle c'est important d'avoir des gens qui sont prêts à aider leurs confrères et consoeurs. Et je pense que ça répond effectivement à sa question. Sophia?
Thank you so much, Greg. I have Andrea, but before we continue, if people can just keep their questions to about 30 seconds, so Greg can respond in both official languages. So next we have Andrea, and following Andrea, I will ask Dwayne's question that's in, Dwayne's question that's in the chat. Andrea?
Yes. Hi, MP Fergus. My name is Andrea Pierce, and I'm with the Afro-Canadian Chamber here in Ottawa, as well as the UNDPAD Push Coalition. And I wanted to ask you, I'm very grateful. I think the entrepreneurship program is excellent. And I applaud you and everyone else that has been working on this. But I wanted to ask you a quick question on the throne speech. The Prime Minister's speech included diversifying procurement. And I wanted to ask you, is that going to be something that will be worked on going forward? Because even though the entrepreneurship program is excellent, it's not necessarily something that's going to also keep us long. We need customers and business for our businesses to be sustainable and to continue. So is the government going to be working on doing a procurement strategy for Black businesses? Was that what was hinted or not? And I want to ask the same question to Councillor Rawlson about the City of Ottawa. Is there a diversification procurement strategy that would allow Black-owned businesses to be able to participate in that ecosystem?
Excellent question. Thank you, Andrea. First of all, sorry, Andrea, you might want to just turn off your microphone. There's a bit of feedback coming in. Thanks. All right, so when we published the Parliamentary Black Caucus had published its statement back in June, we listed a whole number of things on the economic front. The entrepreneurship program was just one part of it. Another part of it was precisely what you raised, is a question of contracting and procurement, because governments, plural, all levels of government, the procurement process is, we're talking about frankly, over $100 billion a year of procurement that goes on. If we were to capture just our demographic weight of that, that's a huge opportunity for Black-run, Black-owned businesses to scale up and become competitive on a national basis. So yes, that's very much what we're working on. That's what, when the speech from the throne, that the Prime Minister was referring, and we're working on that right now. And may I say that what we're trying to do is that we're trying to learn from the best practices from our Indigenous brothers and sisters who have already started this process, at least at the federal level, and we're trying to imitate their success on this. Alors, je vais juste dire en français que Andrea avait soulevé la question de la procuration des contrats de gouvernement, l'approvisionnement des services au gouvernement. Est-ce que c'était mentionné dans le discours du trône qu'on veut chercher un profil plus diversifié dans notre système d'approvisionnement des services et des produits du gouvernement fédéral? Et est-ce qu'elle avait posé la question, est-ce que ça répond à notre... Est-ce que c'est l'intention du gouvernement de faire quelque chose pour la communauté noire? Et oui, effectivement, quand le caucus parlementaire des Noirs avait publié notre déclaration en juin dernier, il y avait plusieurs éléments dans la rubrique, sous la rubrique de l'économie ou des mesures économiques qu'on peut prendre pour soutenir les communautés noires à travers le Canada, et c'en est une. On travaille là-dessus. Et on emboîte le pas de nos frères et nos sœurs autochtones qui ont, eux, déjà commencé ce travail avec le gouvernement fédéral, parce que l'approvisionnement des services représente plus de 100 milliards de dollars à travers le Canada chaque année. Alors, ça, c'est un super bon marché, un excellent domaine dans lequel on doit chercher notre part de marché pour appuyer nos entreprises, pour accroître nos entreprises. Et effectivement, ça, c'est une initiative du caucus parlementaire des Noirs. Et puis, on travaille avec le gouvernement actuellement pour réaliser ce projet-là. Merci.
And I would just quickly say that when we were doing public consultation, brief session of public consultation when the community was asking for an anti-racism secretariat. After employment equity, the key concern that we heard was access to economic development opportunities by the community. So we are establishing the anti-racism office at the city. It will start to reach out and have conversations with the community, but we are very much aware that there is strong interest in social procurement policies, and it would be my expectation that policies that would emerge from the anti-racism office as it does analysis on economic development, which we want to be, and I want to make this clear, we don't want endless consultation, we don't want endless analysis. We have to move relatively quickly, and I think the municipality does have the capacity to move much more quickly. But we heard that loud and clear that Black businesses need access to those procurement opportunities at the city, and that's something that I would be driving at as we continue the process with the establishment of our anti-racism.
Thank you, Councillor. We only have time for about 3 more questions. Dwayne had asked in the comments, have the banks allocated a specific amount to the Black Entrepreneurship Program, or is the $221 million just federal funds, specific amounts to? Well,
and I'm going to interject here, Sophia. After Greg answers this question, I see that we have Jay on the line, and he is a manager at RBC. So I think that he'll be able to talk to what the banks are actively doing in terms of finance, capital access for Black businesses.
Great. Greg, we'll get you to respond in both languages, and then we'll pass it over for a minute to Jabez.
Short answer is yes. Indeed, the banks altogether and credit unions altogether have actually put up the majority of the money. The federal government put in $93 million. The banks to date have put in $128 million when you add them all up, including the Royal Bank that Jay could talk about. I want to say, you notice I said to date. We are in discussions, continuing discussions with other financial institutions who want to play their role. and they want to put in some serious cash to play that role. And when they're putting in this money, this isn't money that says, okay, all their Black customers have to go over here to get access to loans. No, this is additional money. I think they've realized, like the federal government has realized, like I think all governments have realized, that there's a lot of work to do to overcome anti-Black racism. And it's not how we got here now. We're here. How do we move forward together? Alors, la réponse à la question est très simple, oui. Le gouvernement fédéral a contribué 93 millions de dollars dans ce fonds-là. La majorité de ces fonds vient des institutions financières. Alors, 128 millions de dollars à date qui a été contribué par ces institutions financières. Je dis à date parce qu'il y a d'autres caisses, d'autres institutions financières qui sont en négociation avec le gouvernement fédéral actuellement pour contribuer, de faire leur part pour régler ou pour commencer à adresser ou résoudre la situation ou la discrimination anti-noire qui existe dans le domaine du système financier. Je salue ces institutions-là. Je pense qu'ils sont au courant que quand on fait un examen de tout leur dossier, ils vont voir qu'il y avait de la discrimination systémique. On a des résultats qui ne sont pas bons. Alors, moi, je ne litige pas le passé. Nous sommes où nous sommes. Nous nous trouvons où nous sommes maintenant. Et c'est important qu'on travaille main dans la main pour répondre, pour bâtir un meilleur avenir et pour s'assurer que les Noirs vont prendre leur place comme tout autre Canadien pour créer la prospérité. Merci.
We'll pass it over to Jay. Jay will give you a minute to speak about how the banks are going to be participating in the entrepreneurship program.
Thanks, Sophia. Can you hear me well? Excellent. I'd like to firstly thank Rawlson King for inviting me to take part of today. I'd also like to thank everyone who went into organizing this important town hall. I think it's a very important conversation that we're having. And in addition to my role as a manager at RBC, I'm also the Director of Communications for our Mosaic ERG, which is dedicated to newcomers and visible minorities. And at RBC, our purpose is to help clients thrive and communities prosper. And it's the community prospering piece that really engages me and what I'm truly passionate about and has led a lot of the work that I'm doing. I'd like to first acknowledge the systemic racism that I personally experienced as a colored person, and all the work that we've been doing since the tragedy of George Floyd. And I think a really important piece is going beyond words, moving towards action. And I'm glad to hear the announcement by the government and what we're doing here at RBC. And to elaborate on that, at RBC, diversity and inclusion has been the cornerstone of our values for years. But since what we've seen earlier this year on July 6th, we announced several actions to address inequality and systemic bias that disadvantaged Black, Indigenous, and people of color. These actions are focused on three key pillars. One is enabling economic growth and wealth creation. The other is investing for the future. And thirdly, redefining inclusive leadership. And as part of this plan, we've committed $100 million over 5 years in small business loans to Black entrepreneurs and creating an integrated program that provides networking and knowledge sharing opportunities for them. We recognize the importance of bringing this to market as quickly as possible to support our Black community members. However, building a program of this scale requires some time. We will do everything we can to work exponentially on it. And while we also are taking a thoughtful approach to the program's design, we're listening to feedback from our Black employees and our community members. And part of why I'm here is to hear some feedback and input on what you would like to see. And for more details on our specific actions at RBC that we're taking against systemic racism, I could send out a link. We have a lot of work there. But yeah, I'm really glad to be part of this, and I look forward to the rest of the conversation today. So thank you.
Thank you, Jay, for your bank support, and thank you for your comments. We've got tons of questions, but we can only take a few more. The next person up to go is Ketsia Peters, followed by Yodit. Ketsia? Oh, I don't know. Ketsia,
Can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you now.
Okay, all right. So I just wanted to give a comment around some opportunities right now that are happening in the health sector. There's several opportunities to purchase retirement homes, maybe not the big ones, but even the small to medium size businesses. Currently, it's the Desjardins Bank that's financing some of these type of businesses, but it's a business that's not easy. It's a lot of work. But if you already have like, patience and some of the really soft personal skills, it's an opportunity that maybe you may want to look into, because in terms of the opportunity for economics, you not only make some, you generate a financial revenue every month and every year, but also the property value of your building also appreciates over time. So I think it's an opportunity that the Black community should probably look into and consider really strongly, because there's a real need, there's a gap, and I think we have a lot of the personal skills, the soft skills to succeed in that area.
Thank you, Ketsia, for your comments. We have Yodit, and then we have one following question after that, and we'll have to move on in the program. Yodit, go ahead. You're still on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you. I was trying to hurry. Thank you, everyone, for organizing this, and thank you, Greg. Just my question is, and I don't know if I missed, because I joined a bit late, just question around, one is like access. I'm not sure what the implementation looks like in terms of the government who's administering it. How do people access it, and how do we, or do you as a government, ensure that you're providing support for the application process, as well as the communication, so that it's not just one part of the Black community that hears about it, that everyone hears about it. So in terms of communication and outreach plan, if you can speak a little bit about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Yodit. And before I answer your question, I'd also like to just, there are just so many activists who are here on the call, but since Ketsia had raised some issues, I'd like to just say the work that she's been doing has been very, very helpful for the community. I could talk about Ewart Walters, Sarah, I could talk about a whole bunch of people who are on this call. Fred, lots and lots of folks here. Yoda, to your question, we're going to be doing our best to have that communications which are being involved. I think it's gotten a lot of attention, especially by Black-run businesses. I know that Godwin Ifedi will likely carry it in his paper. I know that the Caribbean Camera in Toronto has given it coverage. I know in Montreal, various Black-focused community papers have already given it a fair bit of coverage, and we hope to continue doing that, to making sure that we share that information. I'm just trying to think, Yodit, I'm sorry, what was the other question? You had two of them.
I think, the communication piece, I was speaking to just equalization, right? Like making sure the diversity of our community, both in terms of the socioeconomic diversity, as well as diversity within the Black community. Where we are, I'm East African, I'm Eritrean, very different from the Caribbean. And then the other aspect is, so there's smaller businesses within that. And then the other aspect is, will there be any capacity building type of thing where there's either for us, the community activists, to support entrepreneurs, or directly from the government or the banks, etc.
So in regards to so let me try to break down a couple of ways. One, this program, this Black Entrepreneurship Program, is really focused on the business aspect of things. So it's on the entrepreneurial side. For community organizations and community supports, there's actually also money that had been announced earlier this year that Minister Ahmed Hussein, our Black Canadian minister in the federal government, has been shepherding, and he's asked and he's making sure that there is race-based data that's being collected by the organizations that are distributing this. So Centraide, United Way, that's shepherding this in many parts of the country. They have to, and the YMCA, they have to produce back. They have to give data saying, all right, what's the breakdown of the people who you've given this money to? Which organizations have you supported? So that we're able to measure that. I think that's just going to be now the zeitgeist of this government. We are going to be collecting disaggregated data and publishing that, and so that we could see who is getting access to government funds. And then what steps can we take to making sure that we're distributing it equitably. Specifically on your question that you're from East Africa, I think, folks, and this has nothing to do with the program, this is just me, it's so important for us to work together as a community. In the eyes of many non-Black people, they will not be able to see the difference between someone who is Eritrean descent or somebody who is of Jamaican descent. Or we're all Black people. We can't be crabs in the bucket. We need to be supportive of each other's efforts, so that if this time around an East African group gets some support, we all should be happy for that group and support that. And then we will call on that group, the East African group, to help us out to make sure that the West Africans are able to access money in the next round or in a different program. And we'll all work together to help out the Caribbean folks or the Indigenous Black Canadians. So we need to work together. And I think I've been seeing this across the country, and Rawlson and I have had this conversation. We're moving beyond the crabs in the bucket approach, and I think that's to our benefit. Alors, pour répondre à ces questions rapidement, oui, il va y avoir des appuis certainement pour les entrepreneurs, pour les groupes communautaires. Il y a un autre fonds que le ministre Ahmed Hussein, notre ministre noir dans le conseil ministre au fédéral, qu'il chapeaute, et puis il a exigé que les organismes nationaux qui distribuent cet argent-là recueille des données désagrégées pour qu'on puisse voir qui a reçu cet argent-là. Et ça, c'est vraiment la nouvelle approche de notre gouvernement, de s'assurer qu'on va poser cette question de plus en plus maintenant pour voir qui a accès à ces fonds, qui a accès aux services et comment est-ce qu'on peut s'assurer qu'il va y avoir une répartition équitable parmi tous les groupes racisés au Canada. Ça me soulève un point que j'avais fait. C'est important qu'on se tient ensemble en tant que communauté, qu'on se divise plus comme il y a des gens qui viennent de l'Afrique de l'Est et l'Afrique de l'Ouest, ou les gens qui viennent des Caraïbes, ou des gens qui viennent de la Nouvelle-Écosse. Nous sommes tous noirs. Et dans les yeux des non-noirs, nous sommes juste des noirs. Alors, il ne faut pas être jaloux de succès d'un groupe. On doit les appuyer, on doit les soutenir, parce qu'en revanche, on va leur demander de nous soutenir pour chercher des fonds dans d'autres programmes quand notre peut-être groupe sous-régional va soumettre une demande pour recevoir la subvention d'un programme.
Thank you, Greg. We have two final questions. One comes from the chat. My question is, where are the members of the communities and when can they start to apply for the federal funds? And what is the procedure to do so? And how can we follow up with your office? Greg, if you can answer in both languages.
Sure. So what's happening now is that we've consulted with folks to set up this fund, which is great. Now we can't just give those funds to these groups that have worked with us. They're going to have to apply to become the distributing groups, and I hope we'll have groups which will break out, like a group from Western Canada, a group from Ontario, a group from Quebec, a group from Eastern Canada, to help. They will be the groups that will be working with any applicants. So then it's not government that's going to be making these evaluations. It's going to be these organizing groups, Black organizing groups, that are going to do the support, and they're going to receive the applications, they're going to evaluate them, and they're going to support those applications. And so like I said, that mentoring aspect of it. So that process we hope will be finished by the end of this year. So by early 2021, we're going to start the distribution of these funds that will come forward. That's the plan. I expect that we'll hew pretty close to that. You can be sure that I'll be following up on that. Alors, on a travaillé avec des organismes à travers le pays, des organismes qui représentent des entrepreneurs noirs, des organismes noirs, et on a réussi à créer ce programme-là. Mais maintenant, on ne peut pas juste leur donner ce contrat pour faire la distribution des fonds sans qu'il y ait un appel d'offres. Alors, on est en train de monter un appel d'offres et puis ces groupes-là vont faire l'application. On veut avoir un groupe qui est basé dans l'Ouest canadien, un groupe qui représente l'Ontario, un autre groupe qui représente le Québec, puis un autre groupe qui représente les provinces de l'Atlantique et les provinces maritimes, je veux dire. Et de cette façon-là, on peut s'assurer que c'est vraiment des Noirs, des organismes noirs qui soutiennent, qui ont des liens dans leur communauté pour offrir du mentorat, pour offrir des conseils et pour faire l'évaluation des projets qui vont être soumis par les entreprises et les entrepreneurs comme vous. De cette façon-là, on dit en anglais « nothing for us without us ». Alors ça, c'est la même chose qu'on va avoir avec ces programmes-là. C'est vraiment, ça va venir de la communauté pour soutenir la communauté. Et de cette façon-là, on va créer des réseaux qui sont très importants. Et pour moi, ça, c'est le vrai avantage, la vraie valeur de cette initiative.
Thank you, Greg. We have the one final question coming from Hawa. Hawa, you go ahead.
OK. Moi, je vais parler en français parce que c'est une...
Allez.
Donc, c'est vraiment une très bonne chose d'avoir ces fonds pour la communauté noire. J'ai dit, pourquoi on n'avait pas pensé au début de créer un système financier qui est uniquement géré par les Noirs. Ce fonds devait être allé directement dans un système que du haut jusqu'au bas, c'est seulement des Noirs. Je ne dis pas que c'est une mauvaise chose que ce qui est là, c'est bon, mais c'est une opportunité que vraiment, il fallait demander à la communauté si la communauté elle-même pourra enlever de sa poche et le gouvernement et les banques vont ou elles vont contribuer pour que nous-mêmes, on doit gérer ces fonds, créer notre propre institution financière et gérer ces fonds. Parce que l'argent va être donné à droite et va être repris par la gauche. Parce que vous ne voulez pas qu'on va dans le passé, mais on ne peut pas aller dans le passé, on ne peut pas oublier le passé pour qu'on puisse aller en avant. Parce que l'expérience de la banque qu'on a comme Noir dans ce pays ou ailleurs, c'est traumatisant. C'est très traumatisant. Et encore, cet argent a été dédié pour le Noir et encore on redonne aux gens qui nous ont persécutés, traumatisés par rapport à des prêts. C'est ça ma question. Comment vous êtes arrivé à ça?
C'est effectivement...
Je sais pas.
Excellente question. Et c'est précisément ce qu'on est en train de faire. C'est la raison pour laquelle c'est pas le gouvernement qui va être les personnes qui vont recevoir cet argent-là. C'est pas les institutions financières non plus. Ça va être des communautés noires qui vont faire l'évaluation, qui vont offrir le soutien aux entrepreneurs, qui vont faire du mentorat. Alors, c'est par des Noirs, pour des Noirs. Et on utilise les fonds du gouvernement, on utilise le fonds des institutions financières pour appuyer ce processus. Mais c'est le comité évaluateur, ça va être des Noirs. Et c'est précisément ça. Deuxième affaire, je comprends ce que vous dites. Pourquoi est-ce qu'il n'y a pas une institution financière qui est gérée par les Noirs? Écoute, il y a des bonnes initiatives qui sont en train d'être élaborées à travers le pays. Je sais qu'il y a un mouvement pour créer une caisse populaire pour par des Noirs pour des Noirs. Ils font du travail, c'est basé à Toronto, mais ils ont des liens à travers le Canada et puis ils sont en train de monter une proposition pour qu'ils puissent être reconnus. Et ils doivent chercher des fonds, des investissements des Noirs pour commencer à faire ça. De cette façon-là, les gens puissent avoir la chance de faire leur travail. Mais ceci étant dit, de plus en plus, il y a une conscientisation des institutions financières qui doivent faire mieux. Et ça, c'est la raison pour laquelle Jabez est ici sur l'appel. Je pense qu'il peut répondre mieux que moi, ce qui arrive dans sa propre institution financière. Mais vous soulevez un très, très bon point. Puis j'espère que dans les années à venir, on peut dire qu'il y a 1, 2, 3 institutions financières qui ont été créées par la communauté pour notre communauté. So to answer, her question was two things. One, would there be a, why aren't Blacks being involved to evaluate this program, and would there be there should be a Black financial institution that exists? Why haven't we set one up? Because of all the systemic barriers that we faced in the past. And I responded that indeed the whole idea of this program is that it's not, the government of Canada and it's not the institutions that are actually going to be doing the evaluation and the mentoring and the support. It's going to be given to Black organizations, as I said before, based across the country, and they do the evaluation, the mentorship, the support to support any initiatives that come forward to get a loan. She also raised the point of the importance of having a Black-run credit or financial institutions, and I indicated that there were there's a movement afoot to create. I know that there are a couple of organizations that are trying to set up a Black co-op, for example, and a Black bank, and I know that they're working towards that, hoping that they can get support from the 1.2 million Black Canadians to start banking there and start doing credit unions there to making sure that you have that involvement. That being said, I think it's really refreshing to see the major financial institutions recognizing that there is a problem and they're trying to address it. And that's what Jabez had pointed out to us from the Royal Bank, and he could talk more knowledgeably about what's happening in his institution and perhaps others in that field. But I think there is a movement afoot. So I'm feeling, I'm a glass half full kind of guy, and I see that things are changing for the better for our community, and it's thanks to people like you participating in these kind of conversations that are making a real difference.
Thank you, Greg. We appreciate you joining us today. Folks, Greg, I'll ask you to leave all your information in the chat for anybody who wants to reach you later for conversation. Your email and possibly a phone number to your office. We want to thank you again for coming in and sharing with us about the Black Entrepreneurship Program. We are going to have to move on in our program. I just want to remind folks to please use the chat and use the raise hand function as well. We wanted to ensure that everybody knows this is a sacred space for Ottawa's ACB communities. What you say here is safe here, and we'll move on in the program.
And Sophia, of course, I wanted to say thank you as well to Greg. He might not be a minister yet. He is officially, I believe, a parliamentary secretary to the Treasury Board, which I think is very important position. But of course, he is honorable to all of us. And we really do thank you, Greg. And I thank you for the friendship. And for, in a sense, the mentorship that you've provided to me as an elected official.
We're doing this together, Rawlson.
We don't get a chance to chat as much because we're very busy, but I do very much appreciate the work that you do in our community. It is just wonderful. So I really thank you for being on this call. And I know I am probably hijacking a little bit of this of our timeline here, Sophia. But I did want, since we were talking about economic development opportunities, I did want to give. I see Wise is on the call, and I did want to give him an opportunity to speak. He is an artist, local artist, who reached out to my office just, I think, a scant 4 weeks ago to talk about an economic development opportunity initiative around a cultural center. So I just want to give him 2 or 3 minutes so that we can preserve our time on the call and then move on to Yursa. But give him a few minutes to talk about this opportunity that he is interested in developing in Ottawa.
Absolutely. Wise, go ahead. And Greg, you're welcome to stay as long as you possibly can. Thank you so much.
I'm going to stay for a couple of more minutes, but I do have another engagement about 10 minutes away at 2:45. So thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Wise, go ahead. You're on mute.
Okay. Yeah, it's okay now?
There we go.
Okay. Bon, merci. Bonjour. Thank you very much. I really appreciate cette initiative parce que ça rejoint vraiment ce que nous faisons actuellement. Doing what we're doing now. For me, I am an artist. I'm an art educator, also an entrepreneur living here in Ottawa. And the last 5 years, I worked, I did almost 200 workshops with school and communities. I've been in touch with more than 5,000 kids in Quebec, in Ontario, giving them workshops like how to build identity, how to build self-esteem, how to fight anti-Black racism. And aujourd'hui, j'ai amené un projet beaucoup plus concret because it was very a big honor to have the conseiller at 2 weeks ago. I did a press conference to launch my new project. And the project was to really call community to help us build something, because I believe systemic racism, anti-Black racism is something who will build beaucoup de siècles aujourd'hui, 600 people can explain you how, people who was owned slave and scientists and artists was developing racism. My initiative to build Afro-Black Cultural Center here in Ottawa is initiative. First, I want to build initiative to create opportunity for Black artists. Because like I said, I'm a full-time artist here in Ottawa. There's not a lot artists, but Black artists, we don't have a very professional space we can work. We don't have a very space we can collaborate. And for me, somebody who work with youth, with kids and school, I've been mentor for a lot of kids in school. A lot of parents want to work with us after school. There's no place we can really transfer that kids, that knowledge, that mentorship, that self-esteem, that motivation. Then my initiative is how we can build Afro-Black Cultural Center. I like something you said together in the beginning. We are Black. I know you are divided. There's African, there's Caribbean, there's Black, but I want to name that initiative Afro-Black culture. It's unity. It's not about African, it's not Caribbean, it's not for Black, it's for Black people. How we can have a hub, a home, we can inspire the next generation to use art, creativity, to deconstruct anti-Black racism, because I believe politics is good, but with art, creativity, and culture, we can deconstruct anti-Black racism, systemic racism. And I want to tell you one of the best examples, the last 2 years, if you know the Black Panther movie. Black Panther movie is one of the best movies in the world now because it inspires Black people. It shows Black people our history didn't start in slavery, in colonization. Our history, we are before. We have colonization, it's good to have accent, it's good to be Black, it's good to be yourself. Now my initiative is how we can promote ownership, because I believe racism is economic problem. If you feel inferior to somebody who have money than you because you don't have stuff, complex inferiority, complex superiority is based on what we have. Now I believe if we want to fight anti-Black racism, it's how we can use culture and poverty, how we can fight, how we can use technology, art, how we can teach young generation to really believe on themselves, to really own their talents. Donc, with the Afro-Black culture, we want to develop agency who develop Black artists, who help them how to develop their talent. We want to create an industry. Black people are stars all over around the world. We don't own our industry. And for me, how we can create industry, art, and culture here in Ottawa. And I'm ready for that. And you will see we have an event coming November 14, organizing a big fundraising to start the project. Le conseiller était avec nous, was looking for $100,000 to create an office, to have a space. Now we have an office. This week coming, we will book our office to own that office. And we want to open everything in January, in the beginning of January, like you said, but we are ferme déterminés, on est fermement déterminés à créer quelque chose de vrai pour attaquer le racisme anti-noir à la racine, qui est la valorisation et la restauration de l'image des Noirs. Merci.
Thank you, Wise. That was great information.
And I also just wanted to briefly say before we move on that there are multiple cultural initiatives. I see Suzanne Rogers from the Cultural Arts Studio, which also runs actually in Ward 13 on this call. There are multiple cultural initiatives that have emerged from community. And I just want to say, we're thankful for all the efforts of our artists, of our entrepreneurs who are trying to really marry a lot of the cultural initiatives with entrepreneurial initiatives that build skills. Those are really important. So it's important for us to really support all of these initiatives. And anytime a community member comes to me and asks for that support, we want to get the message out there that we need to support our businesses, that we need to support our cultural and arts activities. It's just so key.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. We will move on now, and we will introduce you to our new anti-racism specialist, Yursa Osman. She's been brought on to deal with specific information, and I'm going to let her introduce herself and let you know about her new policy office. So Yursa, if you want to come on.
Hi everyone, thanks Sophia for the introduction and for inviting me today, and Councillor King for organizing this town hall. I'm so excited to be here and agree with everything that's been said and continuing to listen to our community. So like Sophia said, I recently came into this role just a couple of months ago. It's only been 2 months for me as the city's anti-racism specialist. So this position hasn't existed before. So it's brand new, and I'd like to take a bit of time today. I'll be very quick to talk about what this role is, what I'll be doing, who I am, what the scope of the work is. I prepared a presentation. Now I feel it's a little technical, but I just wanted to give people a visual and some language around what this work is. And I think it might help just to really clarify what I'll be doing. And I'm really excited to get started. So I'm just going to turn my camera off, but I wanted to say hello first. And I'll turn my camera on after for the Q&A. So let me share my screen. Oh, Councillor King, it looks like you have to give me permission to share my screen.
And you should be able to now.
Great, thank you. Right, so. All good? Yep, great. So a little bit about me. I recognize so many people here, just want to say, and it's really wonderful to be connected once again. It's been challenging to continue our relationship and everything with everything that's been happening. So I'm so glad to be here today, and I know it definitely won't be the last time that we'll have town halls like this and sessions like this with everyone. So a little bit about me. Obviously, very proudly Black Canadian. My work has always involved anti-racism action. Most recently, I work as a mental health counselor and trauma counselor. I'm a registered social worker and educator. I worked at Carleton University within the School of Social Work. I've developed and created anti-racism trainings and research projects that relate to trauma and racism in our communities. So what is the Secretariat? The Secretariat is an initiative within the city that will target systemic racism by building an anti-racism approach into the way our city government develops policies, makes decisions, evaluates programs, and measures outcomes. So I saw a question in the chat, I think from Jonas asking this. This is what the Secretariat will be doing. We seek to identify and work to dismantle systemic barriers for racialized people in Ottawa. So within the city, I work closely with my colleagues who lead the Women and Gender Equity Strategy, as well as the Municipal Reconciliation Action Plan. So we really try to focus on common key pillars and intersections of these portfolios. So my position within the city is to coordinate the Secretariat to, like we're doing today, build relationships with the community and also internally across city departments. And long-term, we really want to work towards creating an anti-racism strategy for the whole city. So what's my approach? How am I approaching this work? I hope to bring to this work an approach that is really grounded in the methodologies and knowledges that our communities, both current and historic, have articulated to really address racism. So Indigenous, Black, and other racialized advocates have really paved the way for us. And I have always been listening, but in this new position, I will be listening and will be working alongside the coalitions and communities working hard in our city to fight against racism. This work will absolutely and always begin with a deep recognition of Algonquin and Anishinaabe presence and nationhood, and the important solidarity between Indigenous and the ACB community. So on the slide, you see something that's written there, intersectional anti-racism approach. So that means that we're really taking a trauma-informed intersectional approach to ensure that we're listening to all facets of our community. The ACB community, urban Indigenous people, racialized Francophones, LGBT and queer communities, people with disabilities, newcomers, everyone. Everyone is included in this anti-racism work. And so what's really important to me is that the work of the Secretariat is guided by the community. It is and always will be our community who will shape this work. And we're going to be doing this together. And the actions that we will be taking, that we are taking, are designed to ensure that this will happen. So what's within the scope of the Secretariat? When I came on, I'm not gonna lie, it was a little overwhelming. I'm someone who's always worked in the community, and to come into bureaucracy, it's been eye-opening for me. These are things that we know as the community, we're experts in this, but to articulate it in the government terminology is what I've learned to do. And I guess that's an example of the slideshow that I've prepared. I've been doing so many presentations, and it's really just talking about what the city will be doing and what the city structures are. So what's within the scope? A pillar of the Secretariat will be to focus on reviewing with an anti-racist lens how the city delivers services and creates policy within the areas where the city has direct jurisdiction. So these are some of the departments that are responsible for delivering the city services and programs. So my role is specific to these city services and what the city has jurisdiction over. These are some of the areas on the screen. So if anyone has specific questions about what this means, I can definitely answer that. And at the end, I'll share how to keep in touch with me and how to stay in contact. So as Councillor King has mentioned, we have developed some priority areas that will be starting off the work of the Secretariat. So I'll talk about what the upcoming actions of the Secretariat are, but first just to go over the priority areas for this work. So these are the 6 priority areas of the Secretariat that are based on years and years of feedback from the community. As Councillor King mentioned, we've been consulted, we've consulting just so long, and really it's past consultation at this point. It's really about action. So these are the areas we'll be focusing on. What action look like, what does it mean, and how can we move forward? And just to clarify, these are not the exclusive priority areas, but this will be a starting point that will cover much of the city's scope of work. So due to time, I'm just not going to go over the specifics, but it is available through the proposal that Councillor King has publicized, and I can also share this presentation to anyone if you want to know more about the specific components in this. So what will be the upcoming actions? The goal, like I've said, of the upcoming first phase of actions is to give racialized communities the opportunity to profoundly shape the direction of the Secretariat. Okay. So what's upcoming are the three things on the screen. The first one is the formation of an anti-racism advisory committee. So the Secretariat will be guided by an advisory committee made up of experts from the community. That advisory committee will help review and provide feedback on the anti-racism strategy planning process, what are the deliverables. We'll be sharing subject matter expertise on the needs and issues of racialized communities. And so I've already started working on a scan of what these committees look like in other municipalities who are also leading anti-racism work at the city level. And I will be soon proposing a structure and publicizing it. So the proposed structure is being developed, but it will include individuals like everyone here who have subject matter expertise, but more importantly, lived experience expertise. Okay, so we'll include people from the community as well as city staff. The structure, like I said, is still under development, but we'll be paying close attention to representing the full intersectional diversity of the racialized communities. And we'll be putting out a call for nominations very, very soon. The next thing will be an Engage Ottawa survey. So this is something that other sectors in the city have used. There's this website, Engage Ottawa. I'm gonna take a minute right after this to show you where to sign up. So this survey is really to give the community an opportunity to shape the next actions of the Secretariat. And it'll also include a question that I think is important that I really stress wanting to hear from the community about. It's going to ask, how would you like the Secretariat to communicate with you and to engage with you? How would you like to stay in touch? How would you like us to do this work? And so your valuable input will help guide the direction of the next anti-racism initiatives. And finally, not consultations, but action planning sessions. Okay, so these sessions they're going to invite residents from specific racialized communities, such as today the ACB community, to provide their immediate recommendations within those 6 key priorities that we've laid out. So these sessions are focused on creating and identifying action, not consultations. We've been consulted enough. So I really want to stress that we are moving towards creating actionable steps based on what the community has told us so many times before, what we've heard before, what we all know. So these are the next 3 things that I'll be launching very, very soon. And finally, I just wanted to share my email with everyone. I'm always open to one-on-one discussions, meetings, attending organizational meetings or anything like that, participating in events. Please keep in touch with me if you like. I really look forward to working and continuing to work with the remarkable advocates, activists, artists, community leaders, business owners, entrepreneurs, our youth and our elders of this city to really do this important work. And I want to quickly show you how to sign up on Engage Ottawa. I have it open right here. So I'll send the link in the chat, but for the link, once you are on this page, you'll see the title, you see Councillor King's picture, my picture. You scroll down, right under Councillor King's video, there's a section that says Stay Informed. So just sign up right here and you'll be subscribed to all the updates of the Secretariat. When we launch all of these things, you'll hear from us.
And Yursa, I know that unfortunately it doesn't seem like your web browser is popping up, but I believe it's at the Engage Ottawa website, and yes. It would be under, I guess, anti-racism and ethnocultural relations. There's a clear tab that you can click on, and you'll be able to get access to it. And you brought it up.
Okay, yes. So right here, this is the page, everyone. I'll send the link in the chat. So when you scroll down right here on the right, put your email address there and you'll be subscribed. Okay, I went through that very quickly, conscious of time. So I hope that, I hope I've given everyone a brief introduction to what this work will be and what I'm looking to do in the next few months. And like I said, it'll be launching very, very soon. Please stay in touch with me. I'll be staying in touch with you, and I look forward to our next steps.
Thank you, Yusra. We really appreciate it. In the chat, there's multiple congratulations on you receiving the appointment for the job. And if anybody has any questions, again, please use the raise hand feature or type it in the chat, and we will take questions for Yusra now. I'm going to try and scroll back to see if there was a question for Yusra, because I think you had answered it. Any new questions for Yusra? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Yusra? Please raise your hand in the chat or type it in the, please raise your hand in the participant section or type it in the chat.
Hi, Sophia. I have my hand raised.
Oh,
it's
sorry,
Suzanne.
Hi, Suzanne. Go ahead.
Might I be able to chime in?
Yusra,
congratulations, Yusra, on this role, and congratulations, Councillor King, for the work in bringing this role to fruition. It's incredible progress and an exact example of action that came from much consultation. My question is around potential intersectorial scope within your work. So I heard very clearly that this role governs where the city has direct supervision, but the city also has quite a bit of influence, particularly within the health realm. COVID-19 is an example of that. And I'm just wondering whether there's opportunity for your role to influence the health sector, where I know the city does not have direct supervision, but where many of the priorities that you oversee influence the health of the ACB community and what their access and experience looks like within the health sector.
Suzanne, thanks for the great question. Yes, absolutely. So the city does have jurisdiction over public health initiatives, as you know, Ottawa Public Health, as well as some other realms, you know, with CHCs. So absolutely, my role will be part of that. It will be to hear what the community is saying, to bring that back to the policy and decision makers within the health sector, but also to establish some collaborative relationships with people like you who are working in CHCs, who are working in the health center. As we all know, racism is a public health crisis. We've known that for a long time. More recently, OPH came out with a statement on it. So it is 100% part of my jurisdiction, and it is written in the 6 key priority areas. So health outcomes is absolutely part of that, which includes healthcare, but also mental health provision.
Thank you, Yusra, for answering that question. We have a question from Nathaniel, and then I will read a comment in the chat. Nathaniel?
Yes, hello, and I'd just like to echo my congratulations for Yursa on your new role. I think your presentation was absolutely phenomenal. My question is simply the role of youth and students. I'm a student at Carleton University as well as a student leader, and I know many of us, particularly in the public affairs field, have a lot of opinions about what the city can do in growing our diverse outreach service base and all the rest. So I was just wondering if you can clarify the role of young people and students in this policy development process.
Hi, Nathaniel. Thanks so much for your question. Absolutely, I can speak to that quickly. So youth is another one of the 6 key priorities we'll be focusing on. For me, as someone who is aware of these things, you know, with my background as a registered social worker, mental health and trauma counselor, I've taken steps to be part of the Equity and Inclusive Community Advisory Board or Advisory Group at Carleton University, and I will be taking what we hear from the action planning sessions to that table. So I work very closely within those key areas at Carleton University, and we'll be making this similar relationships with other schools and other higher education institutes in the city of Ottawa. So for me, the action planning sessions, I didn't speak too much on it because I wanted to give time to develop it a little further, but I will say that we are going to be having specific conversations across the board. It will take a bit of time given that we're doing things virtually, but will there be a phase 1 and a phase 2? So phase 1 will be doing more broader conversations, such as like we did today, for specific sectors of the racialized community. And then ongoing from that will be intersections, like who do we need to hear from the most? Youth being one of them. I've noticed so far, the little time that I've been in the city, that we bring up youth a lot, and there is a gap there. And I think that's why Councillor King has included that as a major priority area with the proposal to create this secretariat. There is a huge gap when we talk about the position and the importance of youth in this work. So for me, it's a high priority area. It's something that I will absolutely be focusing on. I would love to connect with you and anyone else after this to really talk about how can we access our youth, what's the best way to make these conversations accessible, how can I come to the community and not wait for youth to come to me, you know? So absolutely there's a place for that, and I want to really work on creating these specific sessions and conversations with youth, because that gap is there and has been there.
Thank you, Yusra, and thank you, Nathaniel, for the question. In the comments was a request for your slides in both official languages. And now we'll move on to the second of last questions. It's from Andrea, and I will ask the next question after Andrea that's in the chat. Andrea, go ahead.
Hi, I do want to say congratulations to Councillor King. Excellent job with the work you're doing. You've made such huge progress so quickly. And my question was for both you and Yursa. Congratulations, Yursa, for your great work and being on board. But it seems like a huge amount of work for one person. I know that we only had one hire. How is the rest of the city working with you to help you in this process? Because I'm sure there's a housing department and all these other things. How are they coordinating with you to help you? Because that's a huge scope of work you have.
I would say, well, let me chime in. You know, there is discussion at the city on an ongoing basis about its structure. Obviously, this is work that's being done by city staff. So there's always a continuing discussion on how units are formulated and how support would be given. So, you know, I can say at this point, I'm assuming that within a month or within 2 months, there will probably be an announcement around some structural changes so that there can be support for these units. I don't want to get ahead of the city manager, because you know, we do deal with city staff. We do delegate authority, but there has been a discussion to ensure that there are the appropriate supports. And around the council table, and as in my role as council liaison, I'm going to ensure that I advocate very strongly, especially with the mayor's office. And I see my colleague, Councillor Deans as well. I'm sure she'd be supportive of more investments in this area as they're required. So at the political level, we are pushing for that. I think at staff level, there's acknowledgement that there needs to be the proper structural components put into place, and that's acknowledged, and staff is working on that.
Yusra, go ahead and just for your comments.
Yes, absolutely. And to echo what Councillor King is speaking to, so far what I've done, a big part of my role the past couple of months has been to meet with specific departments. I haven't met with everyone yet, but I have been meeting with key departments that are within this jurisdiction of the Secretariat to really talk about what they can be doing to support this work. Like you said, and as we all know, I am only one person. So we really hope to have some champions within the city, some people that we can collaborate with to really advance this. A lot of departments actually do have diversity and equity, or, you know, tables like that. They're called a lot of different things: inclusion tables, diversity tables. And I've been meeting with them pretty regularly. Just yesterday, I met with recreation and culture and the arts heritage branch. Actually, I saw someone's asking about the recreation and cultural facilities. So I met with their branch yesterday to talk about how we can work together to advance anti-racism at the city, because it won't be a one-person job. And my position is really just to listen to what the community is saying to bring it back to the city, and to also develop some guiding principles, and to do the reports and to lead the sessions and things like that. So it will absolutely not always be on me, and we hope that in the future we can hire more. And I'm pushing for that. Councillor King's pushing for that. Everyone's really pushing for it, because I've heard that often. It's like, oh, this is a lot for one person. And so that validation is helpful, because it really isn't on me to do this. It's a citywide effort, and those people within each department are really, really crucial.
And I want to just echo that and just make one short comment. It definitely is a citywide effort. I think that people are looking for the leadership. The establishment of the anti-racism office will create that leadership, especially around best practices for different departments. So I had a brief discussion. Well, actually, I was invited to speak to the asset management branch of the city around this issue. And I mean, they're really, wanting to support this. They want supports for their efforts around equity. And it's quite important. I mean, the ideas that are percolating in the city are interesting. Asset management, deals with things like sidewalks and ensuring that we have a proper maintenance of our roads. And they're acknowledging that the quality of sidewalks and the quality of roads might have challenges in more vulnerable priority neighborhoods than in other neighborhoods. And so those are real things. I mean, somebody who's low income, who has to own a car to get to a far-flung job, if the quality of their pavement, and this is really interesting that we're having this type of discussion, because usually it's around social services, not or the soft services, not the hard services. But if you don't have that quality sidewalk, especially as example in a neighborhood where I live, Overbrook, where we have a tremendous number of wide lots and we don't have as many sidewalks as we should. We have a high percentage of visible minority of racialized people who live here, and lower income people, because unfortunately the prevalences are linked. The challenge, of course, is that people are more dependent on active transportation. So that, in a sense, really does represent an inequality. And that was being raised, at the behest of asset management. They're realizing this, and they want to figure out ways to work with us, with the structure, within the structure, to deal with this. So as Yursa is saying, it's not just myself or herself who are working on this. There are a tremendous number of people within the organization who are actually wanting to really address these issues and need the guidance and need the support. And that's important, because there's 17,000 employees at the city, and we all need to be working together in unison to really address the inequalities, from the hard services to the soft services. So I just want you to know that there is interest across the board at the city. So it's not just the two of us, there are others, and we need to bring everybody along.
Thank you, Councillor. There is one more question for you, but we'll just stick a pin there, because Diane Deans, our Councillor Diane Deans, has to leave. So I just want to get a final comment from her, as she'll be exiting the live in a few minutes. So we'll just give you a minute, Diane, to say farewell to the folks, and we'll continue on.
Okay, thank you. I had planned to stay till 3, and I will stay on the call till 3, but I have another commitment shortly after that, so I can't go beyond that. But I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank Rawlson for inviting me, and all of you for allowing me into your space to participate today. I have found it very interesting, very insightful, and I think I would say to all of my colleagues, you all need to take the time to listen to this conversation. And Yursa, welcome to the City of Ottawa. Very happy to have you here. I know you're going to do great work, and you have my personal commitment to work with you moving forward. I hope to be very helpful to you in the work that you do on all of our behalf. So thank you all again. I really enjoyed the afternoon. Rawlson, this is a great effort. I hope you'll do it again. I hope you'll invite me back. And if anyone ever has any questions, and Sophia, by the way, Sophia did a fantastic job. I think we should give her a virtual round of applause. Really great job today. So thank you all. And if you ever have any questions or comments or concerns, whether it be about a city issue that I can help with, or a police services board issue, or crime prevention issue, because I'm the chair of Crime Prevention Ottawa, and Rawlson sits on that board with me. I am here, I'm available. I'm more than willing to do what I can. And so thank you again, and I hope you all get to enjoy this great weather, a nice fall day in the city of Ottawa. So bye, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Deans.
It was appreciated your comments today. We will head back to Yursa. I just want to remind everybody to please put their phones on mute, or their home phone extensions or their cell phones while we take our last question for Yursa. We are coming to a critical point in our agenda, so I wouldn't want anybody to log off or miss. So please continue to stay with the conversation. Yursa, your final comment or question was, can you expand on the role of ARS, your anti-racism secretariat, in the recreational and cultural facilities? Sorry.
Yes, absolutely. I can speak to that quickly. I will say I haven't met with the whole department or the GM of that department as the general manager of recreation, culture, and facilities services. I have more recently, just yesterday, I met with the Arts and Heritage branch. So I can say from my meeting with them that some of the things that we'll be focusing on is ensuring that access to funding when it comes to arts is broad and it is reaching the community, ensuring that the data is representative. That's something that was mentioned by MP Greg earlier, but creating a disaggregated data framework is a huge part of my role. So within arts and culture, that's one major component when it comes to how are they accessing communities and how are they ensuring that communities have a process to apply for these funds, and the position. So those 6 key priorities, one of them is equity and governance and representation. So who is representing the artists and the cultural leaders of the city? When they look in their departments, who's sitting at the table? So that representation is another area. I will say that I'm still learning what each of these departments are doing, the more specifics of it. And that's something that I will absolutely be releasing when we have the planning sessions, what each department is doing, will be doing, and what my role will be in working with them. So I hope to expand on it in the future when we have more town halls.
Thank you, Yursa. We really appreciate all your comments. And if anybody needs, can we just put Sarah on mute, Rawlson? Thank you. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, thank you so much, Yursa, for all your comments. If anybody needs to reach Yursa, she has left her information in the chat. We are going to have to move on to another part of our conversation as we are at the time almost for our ending, but we want to move on to critical conversation that is coming up. So we will leave it back to the councillor for his poverty reduction strategy comments.
Thank you, Sophia. I wanted to really just make it brief. As you might know, politically, when I ran, I was really committed to addressing poverty reduction. As we know, in some Ottawa neighborhoods, more than 30% of individuals are living in low income. I actually live in one of those neighborhoods in Overbrook. Immigrants, Indigenous people, and those living with disabilities are all disproportionately represented in this type of population. And statistics show that 29% of Ottawa's racialized population lives in low income. So it's important across the city, obviously, to deal with poverty reduction. Unfortunately, for the last 10 years, the city has not had a specific poverty reduction strategy. This is for all sorts of reasons. One of the reasons primarily being that city staff over the last decade has primarily engaged in proposals or reports that are mandated by the province. And so a poverty reduction strategy isn't mandated. a strategy that is now being mandated, however, is the community well-being plan. And we are actually in the process of undertaking that. And I go back and forth with city staff in direct consultation with that plan, being a member of Crime Prevention Ottawa. However, in my personal opinion, that's not enough. That is looking at a wider array of elements within the city, which are important. But my feeling is that we've had so many challenges around poverty for the last decade that we should be dealing with it directly. So just want you to know that I will be raising this autumn a proposal for a poverty reduction strategy. The poverty reduction strategy actually has to be undertaken by staff, but within the next couple of months, we will be releasing a paper that will call for one. And we have been, over the last year and a bit, since I've been in office, engaging with community, engaging with different social service organizations, obtaining some information really to drive that that proposal that we would want to present to city council and to the mayor, to say it's very important for us to have a strategic plan, noting, of course, that the city only has so many tools in its toolbox to deal with poverty. And those primary tools need to revolve around coordination. Because of course, we're not responsible for basic income. We couldn't provide that because that's not within our scope. But we do deal with, obviously, economic development. We deal with issues of affordability across the board. In housing, which is a separate portfolio, but something that we have to take a look at. And most importantly, and something that really does affect my ward with some of the highest food bank use in the province, food security. And so we will have some specific proposals around each of those pillars, primarily around food security. But one of the things I'm obviously going to ask the community for is support, because as I said, poverty affects all of us. It affects the city writ large, but it especially affects racialized communities. So that's all I wanted to really say, Sophia. I'll leave the floor open if there are any specific points that people want to raise or questions around that. But I wanted to be very brief and just tell people that that is the next kind of key component of the agenda that I want to move forward. I think we've been at least successful with the establishment of the Anti-Racism Office, which was primarily driven by the community. The community actually said they wanted it. I think that we are in the right direction with Yursa and looking at action planning so that we start to have rapid implementation of policy. I think the next goal in terms of my program will be to look at poverty reduction. So I just wanted to really inform people around the table that that's what I'm looking at, and that's going to be the next major policy prescription that I'll be proposing.
Thank you, Councillor, for your comments around the poverty reduction strategy. We are going to be moving on to our next point in the agenda. What I would like to do is ask the councillor to end the live at this point, end the recording at this point in time, as we are going into a critical piece of our conversation. Councillor, you wanted to say something?
I will, but there is one other point to that. And I would invite Coach Manock, if he's on the call and he's still engaged, to actually speak to some of the initiatives that he's undertaking. The reality is, in terms of poverty reduction, part of that is investments in communities. And I see that he's on the call. I'm not sure, but he's been on the call for a while, so I don't know if he's
Sure,
still,
if you'd like to make a comment, sure.
If you'd like to make a comment about some of the programming that he's engaged in. But the key around poverty reduction is really more investments, obviously, in social services. And Coach Manock is running wonderful programs, especially in my area of the ward. And this is some of the tangible calls that we're making for us. More investments, especially in Indigenous run or in a Black run or racialized run or religious run community programming that really impacts youth especially. So I'll let Coach take it away.
Thank you, Councillor King. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. My name is Manak Lua. I'm a South Sudanese refugee that came to Ottawa at a young age, and I grew up in the Overbrook area. Growing up in the time, there was a huge lack of resources. It got to a point where I started to see most of my friends start to buy into the narratives. And it's very important to understand that these weren't troublemaking kids. These were brilliant youth that just couldn't really handle their trauma the right way. So with the fluctuation of immigrant kids coming to the Overbrook area, we didn't have too many resources. So I chose basketball as my tool. I used basketball to get myself a full scholarship to the University of Prince Edward Island and also get myself into a professional contract. When I was done playing basketball, that's when I came back into the Overbrook area, and I saw a lack of connections between universities and the kids, the talented kids in the neighborhood. So first thing we did is we connected the kids in the area with university scouts to allow them to go to school on a full scholarship. That sounds amazing, but we didn't really do the kids justice at that point because some of the kids started coming back. We started wondering why, what was the misconnection? We were teaching them discipline through athletics, but there was a lack of education that was there. So we started opening up, Presidential is a social enterprise that is dedicated to bridging the gap between disadvantaged youth. We started opening up programming for the community. So our first program was a life skills cooking and coding class for African-American boys and BIPOC youth. You would come in after school, especially the kids that were about to graduate and go into university. That's a huge tool that you need to know to be economically efficient. Cooking is huge. So we would teach you how to cook healthy vegan meals, vegetarian options. And after that, what we would do is teach them futuristic entrepreneur skills. So coding was the one that we chose to actually embrace because software, hardware is a huge thing of the future. We moved into financial literacy, basic skills, being accountable of your finances. Where's your money going? Where are you putting it? Why don't you have $300 in 2 days? Where is that going, right? So the kids started to really embrace the programming that we were doing. The last piece that we added was a justice piece, which we invited non-uniform officers, a judge and a lawyer into a conversation with inner city kids, showing them their rights. Are you able to film? When you're being processed, what are you capable of? What are you not capable of? When are your rights being infringed upon? And I still think that space is definitely open where there's got to be a communication because Overbrook is actually becoming very heavily policed. So I think there's definitely got to be a communication there heading in towards the future. But with all this said, what I'm trying to get across right now is there is 100 kids like me in this city, 100 kids like me. And what we need to make sure that we're providing with these kids and also other Black entrepreneurs is not necessarily just money and loans. That's not going to fix the problem. That might get you into a better footing, but the issue is the resources. How can we get and how can we take advantage of the resources? If someone comes to you and offers you money or resources, take the resources. You can always make money off your genius, off your God-given rights, right? But the resources are something that you have to be able to capitalize for the entire community. So leaving that being said, I think it's very important that we not only provide resources for these kids, these youth coming up, but we provide them with an opportunity that we can provide them with a space with people that look like them and that have been in similar situations, because it's very hard to express your trauma, express your generational trauma coming into a brand new country when someone doesn't understand you, look like you. There's judgment that's brought upon that kind of conversation. So if anybody would like to support what we're doing, please feel free to reach out. I'm going to throw my email into the chat, and also want to thank everybody that's in this meeting. Like, I think you guys are all special, great human beings for taking the time out of your day to come here and really push our culture forward. And thank you, Councillor King, for the time.
Well, thank you, Coach. And I want to say that strongly that programming that you are engaged in, programming that Susan Richards is engaged in, programming that WISE is engaged in. This is the type of programming that we need, especially in vulnerable communities. That's why I put my name on the ballot. That's why over the summer I said we need $15 million from the federal government for investments into social programming that is primarily driven by community. I think that that's absolutely important. And that's why I'm so gratified that you could all join the call. And I will leave it at that. But that is one of the driving factors behind the poverty reduction strategy for me, is to ensure that money is, we can make calls for investments, quality investments in communities that need those investments. So I thank you so much for all of your contributions, all three of you. And I really thank you for being on this call. And now, noting that our program has to move on, I will move to close the recorded session. But for those who will be watching on YouTube and other channels, Facebook Live, we do thank you for attending. And if there's any input, please contact my office through Sophia Jacob.